with this. Well, there's a lot of action set to go down this weekend, tomorrow, on the 14th. As I specified in a previous video, Summer Lin, Chicago's own Summer Lin, is going to be taking on Brendia Gonzalez, and I like Summer to win the fight. I like Summer to win the fight by way of knockout. She's not alone. Fremont, Ohio's own Alicia Baumgartner is going to be in action tomorrow as well against Vanessa Bradford, and I think that Alicia Baumgartner, who's been very eager to get out there last couple of weeks, last couple of months,
she's got a lot of pent-up aggression.
Frustration to get off. She's been out of action since December of 2019, and that way it's been over a year, well over a year, since young Alicia saw any action. And the same applies to Vanessa Bradford, with the difference being that Alicia Baumgartner has her whole career ahead of her.
There's more work needs doing.
And just beyond this fight, Alicia Baumgartner has bigger fish to fry. This is a necessary evil, this Vanessa Bradford fight.
Her first fight in over a year.
Her first fight since her subsequent knee surgery.
At the Caribe Royale.
In Orlando, Florida. And obviously I like Alicia Baumgartner to win the fight. I'm not sure she'll get a knockout. No, Vanessa's a tough girl. She's been in there with Michaela Mayer. She's been in there with Tiara Brown. And Vanessa Bradford, Vanessa's never been stopped. So, off of a year of inactivity for both girls, but, a year of inactivity for Alicia Baumgartner, I'm not completely sure she gets the stoppage, though she is a very strong puncher. At minimum, the conservative prediction is Alicia Baumgartner to win on points.
I think at minimum she can do that.
And, she actually needs the rounds. It might be more of a benefit to her after this stint of inactivity to get out there and go the distance, go the full
8 rounds. Quick picks.
Comes to the top-ranked card, where Australia's own Jason Maloney is going to be taking on America's own Joshua Greer. Quick picks. I like Joshua Greer to win the fight. Joshua Greer, who's coming off a draw. Jason Maloney, who's coming off a brutal knockout loss to none other than Naoya Inoue last year in the bubble during the thick of the pandemic. He hasn't had a rebound fight since then. He's going to attempt a rebound against Joshua Greer, who I think is a fairly capable boxer, capable enough to maybe win a points decision. We'll see. Jason Maloney, he's not the only one of the Maloney brothers that's going to be in action tomorrow night. On the main event of that same card, Andrew Maloney is going to be taking on Joshua Franco for the third time. Andrew Maloney and Joshua Franco's second outing, their last fight, was ruled a no decision after 2 rounds due to a headbutt that Joshua Franco suffered.
I don't think it's going to be a good night for the Maloneys.
Andrew Maloney and Joshua Franco's first fight where Joshua Franco managed to knock down Andrew Maloney in the 11th round, won a decision.
This third fight is supposed to be the tiebreaker.
And this is one of those fights where it would be quite easy to straddle the fence and just enjoy the show, but really, what's the fun in that? I'm going to go with Joshua Franco to win on points. I'm going to go with Joshua Franco to win a decision. Quick picks for tomorrow night's action.
And I could be wrong.
I could be right. The fun part is finding out. Also set to be in action tomorrow night, south of the border, none other than Gabriella Fundoria, the younger sister of Sebastian Fundoria, the towering inferno at 154 pounds.
This caught my attention.
This fight caught my attention because I didn't even know that Gabriella had a fight coming up. This fight, whoever it's against, it don't show up on Gabriella's box record. Gabriella is still scheduled to be taking a flight out next month, September 1 to 10th, to take on Natalie Delgado.
That's supposed to be for a WBA interim super flyweight title.
It's the interim title to Maribel Ramirez's full title, her full WBA title. I question why it is that Gabriella is set to be in action tomorrow night, so soon to what's supposed to be that interim title fight. I also question what happens beyond that interim title fight, it being that the WBA is in the process of phasing world titles out. World titles, interim titles, you name it. They're under a lot of pressure right now. So if Gabriella wins that fight in September, does she still get to hang on to that belt? And if she doesn't, what does that mean?
Because this is intended to line her up for a title shot.
Generally speaking, that's what interim title fights are for. The interim to the full champion, and usually the interim champion at some point gets to challenge the full champion. But if the WBA is in the process of phasing interim titles out, what does that mean for fights like this? And moving forward, what process of elimination, if any, is the WBA going to be employing in order to select mandatory challengers for their champions? What champions remain? As far as the DAZN card that is headlined by Joshua Buatsi, Olympic bronze medalist Joshua Buatsi, who's going to be taking on Latvia's own Ricard Bolotniks. He's from Riga, same place as cruiserweight champion Maris Briedis. Ricard Bolotniks is a guy with 5 losses, 3 of them by way of knockout. Not a very big puncher. Only 8 of his 18 wins came by way of knockout.
Joshua Buatsi a well-schooled boxer.
But he can punch. The guy hits hard. You see what he did to Daniel Santos in his last outing. Stopped that guy over 4 rounds. Brutal knockout.
I recall it took the guy a while to come to.
Joshua Buatsi is still training under Virgil Hunter. What I think is going to be a very fruitful pairing for the two. It's not all on the teacher to mold the student into the best student. The student has to be a good student, and that's what I think Joshua Buatsi is. I think it's a pairing that will yield a lot of synergy and a lot of success moving forward. The landscape in the light heavyweight division is changing. You got guys like Lyndon Orta, interesting characters like Craig Richards, former super middleweight champions in Zerto Ramirez and Callum Smith, who's set to make his light heavyweight debut very soon. Strong punchers in Callum Johnson and Joe Smith Jr., reigning WBO champion Joe Smith Jr., WBA champion Dmitry Bivol of Russia, and unified champion of Russia Artur Beterbiev, of course. This is a division that has a lot of talent and a lot of strong punching guys.
There's a lot of hitters at 175.
For Joshua Buatsi, this Bolotnik fight reads like a developmental fight. I mean, Bolotnik, he hasn't made a splash in this division. He really hasn't made a name for himself. And neither did the last guy, Santos.
I'm hoping Joshua Buatsi steps it up after this.
Because in tomorrow's fight, which is going to be taking place in the afternoon here in the States, I'm giving Joshua Buatsi approximately 5 to 6 rounds before he stops this guy. Joshua Buatsi, who's got about 14 professional victories, no losses with 12 knockouts, and that number is to go up very soon if the prediction sticks, and I think it will. I think it's time for Joshua Buatsi to start taking on a better caliber of opponent than the Santoses and Bolotniks of the world. I think it's time to step it up. I think it's time for things to get a little bit more serious around here. You know, this ain't the best card of the Fight Camp series. It doesn't have all the buzz around it that the last one did. Better still, I view it as a appetizer.
An appetizer to the main course.
Of which tomorrow night there's going to be 2, arguably 3. Golden Boy Promotions card by way of DAZN. Virgil Ortiz versus former world title challenger Egis Kavaliauskas, who only has 1 professional loss on his record. That loss coming at the hands of Terence Crawford in Egis' last fight, his last outing. No shame in that.
I think this is going to be a very entertaining fight.
But I don't think it's going to go the distance. I don't think this thing is going to go the full 12 rounds. Virgil Ortiz, such an impressive resume for an up-and-coming welterweight who's only 23 years old. He's already faced Javier Orozco, El Maestro, Mauricio Herrera, Brad Solomon, Samuel Vargas, Mighty Mo Hooker, and now Egis Kavaliauskas. I mean, these ain't filler fights. These ain't keep busy fights, a lighter touches, or tune-ups. Not for a kid who's 23 years old.
17 fights, 17 knockouts.
People over there at Golden Boy Promotions must really believe in Virgil Ortiz the way they've been matching him, the way they are matching him against a hard-punching, solid guy like Egis Kavaliauskas. So you'll excuse me for saying so. He knocked down Terence Crawford, and I don't think that's the end of the world. When you're fighting solid fighters, when you're fighting good guys, 2-time Olympians like Egis Kavaliauskas, those things are going to happen. Egis Kavaliauskas is no slouch, especially for a fighter who's still developing like Virgil Ortiz. The Mighty Mo Hooker fight comes to mind because Mighty Mo Hooker was touching Virgil Ortiz. I mean, it was a fun fight while it lasted.
But both of those guys will end in shots.
It wasn't all one-way traffic that night. I vaguely recall that Mighty Mo Hooker suffered an injury to his hand that rendered him unable to continue, unable to compete. I think about that stuff. I think about how big and strong Virgil Ortiz is, how aggressive he is. He's got a mean streak. He's a fucking animal, this kid. And he can really go. He can really bang. But so can Egis Kavaliauskas if given the chance. Don't let those Terence Crawford and Ray Robinson fights fool you into thinking that this guy's anybody's patsy. What Terence Crawford, Ray Robinson both got in common is that they're stick and move guys. They're guys who can jab, fence, and feint.
Make it hard for the other guy to get inside.
Manage to distance efficiently to offset the other guy's aggression. Egis Kavaliauskas' aggression, because he has aggression of his own, a mean streak of his own. And if he has it his way, it's a firefight. The same as if Virgil Ortiz has it his way. And that's why I'm expecting fireworks tomorrow night. Because, Virgil Ortiz, he's not some back foot stick and move fighter. And these 2 guys, what you got? There's 2 guys who like to get off to a fast start. It's for that reason that I think Virgil Ortiz might actually stop Egis Kavaliauskas before Terence Crawford did.
Or at least inside 9 rounds.
And it's not due to age or inactivity or anything like that. Igor Kavaliauskas has actually seen action in the last 12 months. He was last in action in September of last year against Michael Ziuski. He stopped him. If I think that this fight is going to end abruptly, it has everything to do with the styles of the fighters. And styles, after all, they make fights. And with these two guys, you got two guys with styles that like to get off to a fast start. That's what they do. That's who they are as fighters. I wouldn't be at all surprised if Virgil Ortiz has to pick himself up off the deck in this fight. And I think the same applies to Igor Kavaliauskas, with the difference being that when this fight is over, I think it's going to be Virgil Ortiz that has his hand raised. There's not a lot of subtlety to either one of these guys. My prediction for this one is Virgil Ortiz by way of knockout or technical knockout, anywhere between 7-9 rounds.
Because both of these guys like to go.
Both of these guys, they're guys that like to bang. I mean, they don't call him the Mean Machine for nothing.
But I do think he's going to get stopped, though.
Finally, we come to the main event of the Showtime card. The bantamweight WBO title fight between Guillermo Rigondeaux, the challenger, and Jonriel Casimero, the champion. So many mixed feelings about this fight because I've never thought of Jonriel Casimero in the same scope, the same respect, through the same filter, the same lens that I have thought of when it comes to Guillermo Rigondeaux in the past. The thing is that we don't know that Guillermo Rigondeaux is that same guy that busted up Amagasa's jaw or outclassed Nonito Donaire. We don't know that he's that guy anymore. We don't know that he's still the guy
Everybody was avoiding years ago.
but it's not like we haven't seen him since then. We have seen him. We saw him against Liborio Solis in what was a very curious performance. Guillermo Rigondeaux was world-renowned for his defensive wizardry and sharpshooting, and that's not what we saw in the Ceja fight. In the Ceja fight, I think I saw Rigo get hit more times than I've ever seen him get hit outside of the Lomachenko fight. Rigo didn't look himself. In the Liborio Solis fight, well, it was the opposite. Less action from Rigo, more...
There's a lot more defensively minded in that fight.
Perhaps too defensively minded. He was fighting negative. You didn't see a whole lot of in-and-out game from Rigo in that fight. You just saw a lot of backpedaling. Against the reigning WBO bantamweight champion, Jonriel Casimero, who's a very bouncy, albeit very aggressive customer, very aggressive champion. Guy who's registered as being 8 years younger than Guillermo Rigondeaux. Guillermo, who's supposed to be about 40, though.
Yeah, right.
There's widespread speculation that he's much older than that. Better still, I don't know what I'm going to get from Guillermo Rigondeaux tomorrow night. I really don't. I mean, I think he still packs enough punch that he could hurt Jonriel Casimero if he can catch him. But that's the question. Can he catch him? Guillermo Rigondeaux, he's never been a volume puncher. He's never been.
He was never that prolific.
Even in his prime, he was always more of a sharpshooter. Guy who's looking to hit you with a shot that you don't see. A counter-puncher. Whereas, Jonriel Casimero, he's a bouncy guy, has some in-and-out game, really commits to his shots. Obviously a puncher. Definitely more of a puncher. More of a busy bee than Guillermo Rigondeaux. And here, at this age, having not fought since February of last year. I mean, you do realize that it's been well over 12 months since Guillermo Rigondeaux saw any action. I hate to say this, but hand on heart.
Right.
My heart is with Guillermo Rigondeaux, but my head, it's with Jonriel Casimero. And it's because, Guillermo Rigondeaux, talented as he might have been,
Decorated.
Olympic double gold medalist, the scariest man in the super bantamweight division at one point. He's never been that lucky.
A lot of tough breaks.
Completely frozen out of the super bantamweight division by Carl Frampton, Leo Santa Cruz, and Scott Quigg. They didn't want to know. They didn't like their chances against El Chacal. Stripped 2 times already. 3 tomorrow night. The WBA title by the WBA.
Yeah, he was stripped of the Ring Magazine title, too.
I'm not a really sentimental guy, I'm not, but when I think about Guillermo Rigondeaux and what could have been if a lot of these other guys found their balls, this probably would have been one of the most decorated Cuban fighters we've ever seen in the sport of professional boxing, because he's already those things and more as an amateur. I don't think Rigo ever got the chance to reach his full potential. He faced such a glaring scarcity of opponents that he found himself jumping up from super bantamweight to super featherweight, 130 pounds for a Lomachenko fight.
He got embarrassed in that fight.
Out-hustled, out-muscled, and outclassed by the much bigger Vasil Lomachenko, who's not just a bigger boxer than Guillermo Rigondeaux is, but he's on par with his amateur background. The both of them are Olympic double gold medalists, and you know what they say.
A good big man will always beat an equally good little man.
Guillermo, he found that out the hard way years ago. I don't think he's ever been the same since. Tomorrow night, he's facing a very prime Casimero, reigning champion, fleet of foot guy, commits to his shots guy.
Busy guy.
Who has seen action in the last 12 months. He was last in action in September of last year against Duke Micah. He scored a third-round TKO stoppage, whereas Rigo has been out of action much longer than Casimero. And you have to wonder, what's this guy's timing like? What's his conditioning?
What are those 40-year-old reflexes holding up?
You gotta remember, at his best, Guillermo Rigondeaux is a sharpshooter. He's a counterpuncher. He's a guy who tries to time you for a big shot. But after that much inactivity, and at this age, what's this guy's timing and reflexes? What are they going to look like against a much busier guy,
younger too,
busier puncher than he is? I see Guillermo Rigondeaux giving up a lot of real estate. I see a lot of clinching.
A lot of wrestling.
I mean, hand on heart, I'd love for Guillermo Rigondeaux to upset the plans for Casimero because Casimero, generally speaking, is a bit of a douche.
Guy's a fucking dickhead.
I'd love nothing more than for Guillermo Rigondeaux to break his fucking jaw the way he broke Armagas's jaw all those years ago. But I just don't know if Rigo's capable of doing that anymore.
He looked awful against Liborio Solis.
It's the impression that fight left on me. Guillermo Rigondeaux looked old and flat.
That was 17 months ago.
It's the strangest thing because I feel like if Rigo can land a clean shot, he can really hurt this guy. But I think he's going to struggle to get off that shot, and I think he's going to struggle to find that window of opportunity to get it off because I think Casimero's going to be all over him.
He's going to fluster him.
Rigo's going to give up real estate, and when he's not doing that, he's likely going to resort to constant clinching. You could see him getting a point deduction throughout the course of the fight. I see a situation where I hate to say this, but
I think Casimero's going to win.
went on points due to activity.